Back when I had an office job, I remember opening up my laptop on a Monday morning and seeing just an absolute deluge of Slack messages and Google Doc notifications from over the weekend. Now, this wasn't just a one-off thing. This was a regular occurrence across different jobs with people clearly working over the weekend and late into the evening hours. On top of it all, they weren't even taking their vacation because they just had too much to do and didn't want to leave their colleagues in a bind, a problem fully created in their own head. Now, you might think I'm describing my old work life in the United States, but I'm actually talking about Germany. My name is Joe Bauer, an American who immigrated to Germany 10 years ago, and today I'm looking at the latest steps being taken to Americanize German work life. I've long noticed a kind of Americanization of the work culture in Germany across my 10 years of living here, especially in Berlin. People work well beyond an 8 or 9 hour day, they don't take all of their vacation, and they struggle to put the phone down, responding to emails and Slack messages well into the late hours of the night. I find this to be especially the case here in Berlin startup culture, where I've had managers tell me to call my team back in well after business hours on a Friday night and brushed off complaints of working too late because they were sometimes working until 2 a.m. Not the brag you think it is, my guy. It was the kind of stuff of American workplace stereotypes, but, in Germany. Now, it seems the government is full steam ahead on this idea of Americanizing German work culture, a country famous for its worker protections and strong emphasis on working to live rather than living to work. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has long complained that Germans don't work enough. We're not working as much as the Swiss, he said, and we're calling off sick too often. He's so obsessed with work, or Arbeit, that someone would have taken out a restraining order by now if Arbeit were a woman. Currently, the law is that employees can call off sick without a doctor's note for the first 3 days. You can also call in to get a doctor's note, which doctors' offices have generally appreciated to help take the load off an already overwhelmed healthcare system and to avoid spreading infections. I mean, if someone has a cold, the flu, or, that respiratory disease that shut down the whole world in recent memory, the last thing you want is someone to pop on over and get everyone else sick in the process. But a few days ago, Merz's government came out with a reform plan that, amongst other things, will abolish an employee's right to call off sick without a doctor's note starting from the first day. Not only that, but you'll no longer be able to call the doctor for a sick note, meaning, while sick, you'll have to figure out how to get a same-day doctor's appointment when you probably should just be resting in bed. Now, he claims this has got to be done because Germans are taking on average 18 sick days per year, and he says it's negatively impacting the national economy. Look, I'm sure some people abuse the system because, humans are getting human. But this to me is kind of like the German equivalent of when Republicans in the United States find some small example of abuse in a social welfare system and diagnose it as a grave and serious threat that warrants eliminating or drastically changing the system beyond recognition. Again, I'm sure some people do abuse the sick leave system, but abusing systems of any kind in Germany is culturally frowned upon. Germans, by and large, are rule followers. Merz, being very much a German, should know this. So he should know that when most people call off sick, it's because they're fucking sick. And forcing sick people into a doctor's office comes with two very obvious problems. One, we already touched on, you usually don't want to put sick people in a room with other people and risk spreading the infection. And two, having to drag yourself to a doctor's office when you're sick is pretty counterintuitive to recovering, and maybe you'll even prolong the illness, keeping you out of work even longer. And then what will the shareholders do? I mean, honestly, will anyone please think of the shareholders? And we wouldn't want to keep you away from the office any longer, or Big Daddy Merz might do a drop-in and stick a thermometer up your ass for a proper reading. Though come to think of it, there's probably a club in Berlin for that. Unsurprisingly, Germans, from workers to doctors, are pissed. Women especially have taken to pointing out the hypocrisy of Merz, a man, essentially telling women to man up and get over their period pain, or to go into the doctor's office for a sick note and maybe pick up some COVID while they're at it. Or, as Chancellor Kardashian would put it,
I have the best advice for women in business. Get your fucking ass up and work.
As someone originally from the United States, what I find particularly surprising is this. In the States, usually when a politician comes out with a big reform package, it's because they're popular and they have the political capital to spend. So based on just how big of a cultural change this would be, you'd think Merz must have an approval rating through the roof. Yeah, 9. A major dock to that one. In the most recent polls, only 13% of Germans said they were either satisfied or very satisfied with Merz's work. He He is currently the most unpopular head of state in the world. And that was before this reform package was announced. Honestly, for a guy with such a dismal report card, kicking and screaming about how the rest of us are working rings just a smidge hollow. It's kind of like a DARE officer telling kids not to do drugs while actively taking lines in front of the class. That joke was almost exclusively for Americans in their 30s and 40s, so thanks for bearing with me. Here's what I think is happening and why people are calling in sick more often. COVID was a life-altering, world-changing moment. And I think one of the lessons people took away from it, particularly younger people, is that none of this matters. The PowerPoint for the Zoom to circle back and align on the scalable synergies to maximize shareholder revenues simply does not matter to most of us. Matz and his kind think that the sick leave days are inflated, but I think they're actually a better reflection of how often people get sick. Before COVID, I think people would just be more likely to push through a cold or any other illness to go to work because that's just what you do. It's anecdotal, I'll grant you, but I remember a group of us had to refuse meetings with a colleague because she was so sick and refused to go home and rest. COVID made crystal fucking clear just how fragile life is and how easy it is to get sick just by being in the same room as someone else. I think there's a kind of cloud of shame now that comes with surrounding yourself with people when you fully know you're sick and contagious. Plus, I think COVID showed people what really matters in life. People realize that if they're lucky to make it to an old age, they won't look back on their life and regret missed opportunities to maximize shareholder profits. They'll regret not actually living their life. So with all of that in mind, I fully believe that there are 18 days out of the year that people just don't feel 100%. And in this post-COVID world, they're more likely to do the responsible thing and take care of themselves without risking someone else's health and call off sick. Because after all, the QBR optimization ROI efficiency plan can fucking wait. But Matz is from a different generation. He is okay boomer incarnate. People like him value work for the sake of work. Doesn't matter if it isn't fulfilling, meaningful, or even good for society. That's some kind of millennial Gen Z nonsense. You gotta work to make the numbers go up and have a good economy so you can buy things like German cars and an endless supply of Haribo. The reform package isn't law and is subject to change. By the time you see this, I might already be out of date. In fact, Matz and his government are already backtracking some in response to the national outrage, albeit defending the need for reform. For instance, Matz has already said you don't actually need to go into the doctor's office if you're really sick, but you do need an Arbeitsunfähigkeitsbescheinigung, or a certificate of incapacity to work, on the first day. So, how you actually get that without calling the doctor or going to the doctor, who knows? Magic, I suppose. All I know is that one of the many reasons I came to this country and wanted to broadly move somewhere in Europe is that people generally work to live here and not live to work. Matz clearly wants to fundamentally change part of what I think makes Germany great and continue this Americanization of the workplace where you're overworked and hesitant to take vacation. It's partly why I left corporate culture in Berlin. I've seen the Americanization firsthand and, gone on interviews where questions about work-life balance were met with cliches like, well, we're just really passionate about what we do here, or we're like family here. I'm sorry, family my ass. I don't ever remember having to do an annual performance review with my family. Though to be fair, I think we all know who'd get put on a PIP. Hey, what the hell? Jesus, why would I write and edit that in? One of my favorite German phrases is Feierabend, which basically means quitting time. Even better, it's one of those smashed together German nouns where you can just keep adding words like Bier for Feierabendbier. It's a short but sweet way to say, I'm done working for the day. It's a linguistic delineation between work and life. And it's a word people like Matz would do well to remember. Tschüss, Feierabend.